Welcome everyone back to Haven of Horror. I'm Subject. This is the Dayghost.
What's
Today
up?
we are talking about the Hellboy reboot, which if you have seen Hellboy 2004, you know kind of what this one is about. But basically, Hellboy is a member of the BRPD who fight paranormal monsters. When the Blood Queen, played by Mila Jovovich, is resurrected, it's up to Hellboy to stop them. Quick plot synopsis there. And Austin, tell us about discount Hellboy. I mean Hellboy 2019.
Yeah, there's nothing discount about this movie. Hellboy 2019 is the most wonderful, beautiful film ever made. Period. Hellboy 2019 is both a origin story and also adapting a lot of the later stuff in the Hellboy comics. So that's weird. It's a movie that is universally hated, but it is the one of the best schlock films I think we've released in like the last 10 years.
Yeah, this movie definitely does not deserve the hate. Feel free to leave us comments on why we're wrong, but we don't care. Um, so this movie starts with Hellboy going down to, is it Mexico,
Yes.
to find a lost agent and somehow ends up in a luchador ring, fighting a vampire who turns into a giant bat. And if that hasn't sold you on this movie, I don't know what the hell's wrong with you.
Don't forget, it's also they fight each other to a Spanish version of Rocky Like a Hurricane.
Oh, right, right. See, I didn't hear any lyrics, so I just assumed it was an instrumental version.
Oh no, once they start fighting, if you like listen close, you can hear it like singing in Spanish.
That's amazing. I didn't even know there was a Spanish version of Rocky Like a Hurricane. So Hellboy this time is obviously played not by Ron Perlman, but David Harbour. And he's doing a different yet similar take on the character. Because this also isn't just workman Hellboy.
Yeah, because the first one, like the Perlman Del Toro version, they very much put like the boy in Hellboy, while this one is more like angsty teenager Hellboy.
This is millennial Hellboy.
Yeah, exactly. So he's just like he'll walk around and be like, "Oh, Dad," instead of like eating candy bars.
And as you mentioned, this is adapting a lot of later stuff, but it's also an origin. So Liz and Abe are in it, which is a very strange choice until you realize this is a Marvel movie made by people who don't know how to make a Marvel movie. Uh, but they made something completely different, completely wonderful. No shade at them for that comment at that by that comment, but I'm just saying this is we'll get to that stuff. We'll get to this. But we're gonna throw everything else in there first.
Yeah, no,
Uh
this is very much trying to build like a shared universe out of Hellboy, which I mean, to an extent makes sense just because like there were like side books and stuff in Hellboy. Like there was a BPRD book. I think there was an Ape Sapien book. But like there is just kind of like different stuff. So like I don't entirely begrudge it or from that. Like outside of, like most things, it's not like handled super well. But in places it's also part of what's wonderful about this movie. Like I like when we flash back to World War II and we see Hellboy's origin again, but this time they insert Lobster Johnson in, and he just he's like doing these like really weird like one-liners like every single like second.
he's
Like,
he's wonderful. He's played by Thomas Hayden Church, and
yep,
this is the best comic book movie he's ever been
bar none, yeah.
in. So obviously we both enjoyed this movie quite well, but it's obviously not quite as good as the Del Toro film. Um,
Yeah, they're completely different. Like the Del Toro film is a good movie, while this is like a fun schlock film that you can like put on with friends and like really just like have a good laugh and enjoy yourself, I think.
I will say, I think the one thing that held this movie back for me, even though I was enjoying a lot of it, is a lot of his supporting cast kind of sucks because you
Yeah,
get irritating British girl and
Alice. Yeah,
Cheetah Man. No,
hmm
Alice is the bad girl. Remember?
no, Alice
No,
is the main girl.
I know the joke is Mila Jovovich played Alice in Resident Evil.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Batwoman, because in season one the main villain is Alice.
No,
I thought you were making a comment about my favorite show.
I've never seen that show.
But yeah, no, Alice in this movie is quite annoying.
Hey, governor, I
Oh,
can
it's
make I can puke
I
up
got a
dead people.
shotgun. Yeah, no, she's not very good. I don't mind Cheetah Man. Like he's not like amazing, but I don't think he's like annoying or anything.
He's
He's
not
just kind of
annoying.
there.
He's just kind of there. His character throughout the whole movie is just I'm angry.
He's
Like,
like, I'm gonna kill little boys.
and then he doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. He learns to let out his Cheetah Man power.
Is he a character from the comics?
Mhm.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Yes, because that is like a big update thing with. So you know, in this movie, he's got like his syringe of the secret of the ooze that he like inserts himself to not become a cheetah. In the comics, it's like more of like a mystical, like kind of like candle type setup, you know, where it's like that kind of old worldy thing.
Which is
But yes,
fine.
because they initially cast the villain of Deadpool, Ed Skrein, is this character, and people were mad because he's like Asian, like British in the comics. So they were like, you know, like you whitewashed this. Then they got rid of that guy and they hired Daniel Day Kim.
No, it's Daniel Day Lewis.
Oh my God, they whitewashed it again.
Oh my god. Yeah, and this is I don't want to say typical superhero movie because it's not, but in places it is. That third act is basically a Marvel movie,
hmm
except better than a Marvel movie because it's got a giant Scottish pig who has one of the best death scenes in any movie I've seen recently.
It makes me sad though. I don't like that he dies. He's my favorite character in the movie.
He ended up being my favorite too. Like I like what David Harbour is doing with Hellboy, but the material isn't there to back him up, so he just ends up screaming a lot. Uh,
Yeah, Harbor's kind of working against the material, I think. Like to improve it. But I think I like him in this movie, but I agree, like he is definitely being chained down. Um, which
because
is
his
unfortunate. I think he'd be pretty cool. Like I think if you gave him a sequel, you know, it could be really good.
yeah, it's really strange that they went the route of him wondering if all monsters are bad guys when he's supposed to have been doing this for a while.
Yeah, no, that is something that's very confused, I think. Just in the sense that it's like, you know, he was born in the 40s and it's like, you know, 2019 and he's like I don't know, like you can he doesn't really feel like he's really been through anything. And I mean I guess to an extent Del Toro's version kind of has that maybe, but also um like not really with that, just to the extent that there's also like you know, he'll like mention like these different relics that he got on missions and stuff.
Well, and the Del
Which
Toro one also has the like he's been spotted in public before. It's more if he's never faced a world ending threat before. Is the sense I get from that movie. Whereas this
yeah,
Hellboy has faced the Baba Yaga, this pig, but now he's wondering if monsters are good or evil.
yeah, well, yeah, because this Hellboy is very much like a more seasoned Hellboy, but also isn't in his characterization. Like it's almost like his characterization is going against what like the kind of world building that they're going for.
Very strange.
hmm Yeah, because even they incorporate, you know, almost like the short story aspects of the comics, where you'll get like just short stories in between, like the big stories, not inserted into those big stories, but they kind of incorporate that in this movie.
Well, this movie is the definition of we're gonna stop the big story and tell a little like 10 minutes.
Yeah, no,
And
this
those are what
movie is
makes
like
the movie.
80% flashback.
But those flashbacks are the stuff I found myself enjoying the most. Like you get the flashback where he's like fighting the baby, which was hysterical. You get that Baba Yaga scene, which is creepy and like
Well,
made me
that's not a
shiver.
flashback,
That's true. But
but
that
that is
Baba Yaga
definitely
scene
like a.
made me go, ugh, in a good places.
Yeah, no, it just turns into Evil Dead for a scene, and it's great.
Yeah, I would love to see
Which
Sam Raimi's Hellboy,
is something we should say too, which is this film definitely is using its R rating.
which I really liked about that. This is, although it was a little funny when the first time you hear Professor Braun, played by what's that guy's name?
Ian McShane.
Ian McShane. He's just like, fuck.
Yeah, because it's the opening narration, and he's like, "The dark times," which was very correct because it was fucking dark, something like that. Like it's just like,
That just like, oh, we're the edgy Hellboy.
yeah, that opening is so perfect too. It's just like, they capture this like evil witch, and she's like, "No weapon can harm me, Excalibur." Got her head up,
Uh,
and I
uh,
mean, she knows what movie she's in.
that was the next thing I was going to ask you because I know Mila Jovovich gets a lot of hate now for those Resident Evil movies, but I liked her quite a bit in this movie. How do you feel about her in this?
Yeah, when she was cast, I was like, this movie's gonna suck. But I was like, whatever, I'm gonna still like hold some hope. Then when I saw it, it's like, no, she gets the material she's in.
I've always felt like Mila Jovovich is a decent actress when she's not being directed by her husband.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, it seems like all she wants to do is her husband's movies.
I mean, she's not, and I mean, I don't blame her for not being like an amazing actress in this movie, but like, she gets like the kind of schlocky material that she's in, and she hams it up. And I think it works for something like this in a way that like, when we get like more traditional superhero movies where like the villain will ham it up and it just kind of doesn't, where it feels like too over the top.
Yeah, it's tonally consistent with
Hmm.
with the rest of the movie.
Yeah,
Um,
no, this film, it's got a giant Scottish pig. Look,
I
he
don't
rips a
understand why
man's
people hate this
throat out
movie.
and he rips a man's throat out and he speaks through it. What
So let me ask you
kind of
this: do
movie
you
this
think part of
is?
the reason that people hate this movie is it was mismarketed?
Um, I don't know.
Because I remember when this movie was announced, they said it was going to be like the dark, rated R, Hellboy, and then that first trailer came out, which is when people freaked, and it had like a pop song. And
Money Money, by Billy Idol.
hmm do you think that was the problem? It was mismarketed.
So I think it's a mixture of things. I think the trailer didn't help, but I also think people and you know one thing that has to be said is the first two Del Toro films weren't box office juggernauts. Like those are more so called classics. Um, like they did kind of just well enough to warrant a sequel. I'm actually kind of surprised the first one got a sequel because I it didn't even make 100 million at the box office. But so I think it's just a mix of things. So I think the like hardcore fans for like a Hellboy movie were very bitter that we weren't getting a third Del Toro film. I think you get people who are just kind of like, I don't like reboots. I think you got the trailer that kind of set in the wrong tone. And then I know a lot of people walked into this and they were like, this movie's just like too mean spirited, which I don't really care about.
I don't get that.
Well, it is a movie, there's a scene where Hellboy's like having a dramatic moment with his dad and he's like, Father, and his dad just goes, Shut up, let me say something.
I mean, yeah, I guess. I just thought that was
Funny,
more comedic. Yeah.
like it would, yeah. But I think some people and their more like just kind of sensibilities are like, it's too mean spirited. But oh, that's just like a complaint I've heard. I don't necessarily have that.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, think what you want about this movie, but it's wonderful. Yeah,
Yep. No, I walked out of this movie in the theater and I was like, granted, this came out in April 2019, but I was like, this is the most fun I've had in a movie all year.
this is also not a super deep movie, so I don't have a whole lot to say. Um, I like it captures what I love about horror films, but maybe this is the wrong material to do this kind of tone. Do you think?
Yeah, I think because that's another thing I should say is that I don't like I like all of the Hellboy movies to varying degrees. One thing, the reason I like Hellboy 2 the most out of them is that Del Toro just kind of drops any pretense that he's adapting Hellboy and he just does his own thing. Because I don't think we've ever really gotten Hellboy, like comic book Hellboy, on film, and I think there's still room for that. Um, but I think like if you're going the horror route, which makes sense, it's more of like a universal, like it's kind of that Batman Brave and the Bold thing, right? Where it's you take the universal monsters and you kind of update them to what as a kid you thought those movies were in a way, where they're like very grand and big and like atmospheric. I mean, they're still atmospheric, but you know what I mean. Just kind of updating it in that way. While this gives it more of like a trashy, like B movie, like schlocky, like early Sam Raimi, early Peter Jackson kind of vibe.
Yeah, I could see, yeah, that's definitely interesting, and I think I think it's odd the stuff they end up just redoing from Del Toro's version. It's really odd that this movie also ends with him becoming like his demon self, and that it's young Hellboy, like, but he's old.
Yeah, which I mean, Hellboy even in the comics he like ages differently. So even though he's like 60 or something, or like 80 in the comics. He's more so like that of like a 30 or 40-year-old, even younger in both movies.
Well, and I don't mean so much old as in age as physically aged. It's interesting that when we reboot, the first thing we do is just take it back to the mentality of a young person.
Well, no, that's what I mean. Yeah.
If we ever do this again, I'm wondering if they will try to avoid that.
Maybe I could see it just being, one of those things where a movie sets a precedent for a character, and then that's what we do every time we adapt them.
Maybe.
I hope not. I'd like to see like a more traditional Hellboy on film, but we'll see. Who knows what the future has for him?
So this is mostly just for the sake of the video, but which Hellboy one do you prefer?
Oh, the Del Toro one, of course. But
I figured.
I like them for different reasons.
Mhm. Do you have this thing I do where, because we talked about it a little bit, but this Hellboy looks really weird in some shots that I don't have with Perlman, and I think the makeup is not quite as good in places.
Hmm. Yeah,
His
there's
face is too
places where
flat,
he looks like comic book Hellboy, and then there's like other places where it's like I think he's probably too made up because it's like the prosthetics like stick out, and I think he like harbors doing what he can to act through the prosthetic. While Perlman, his face isn't as made up. You know what I mean? Like it's more so he's got like everything around him and he's got like the horns on his head, but his face itself is just kind of painted red. While the David Harbour version, it's like they puff out his cheeks a lot more, like the forehead comes out a bit more. I think they do some stuff like around like his nose and mouth too. So it's just like much more. He's got a lot more crap on his face.
yeah. Well, and see, it's interesting you say that because I think part of it is his face looks too flat in places. Uh,
Oh, okay. See, yeah, I've always had more so that it like sticks out weirdly. That's
but
interesting.
the final form they do when he's got the horns and shit looks awesome. Uh, I think
Yeah.
it looks. That's the only thing I think looks better in this version than the 2004. 2004 one is just like he's got fire up here, and his horns extend, but they're not too long. This one he's like full
Like,
fucking demon.
like, like all the
Yeah,
way around. Like, yeah. Yeah, and you get like that scene with his mom and the goat.
that was very strange. I couldn't believe they did that.
No, that's
um,
like this movie in a nutshell, though, right? Like, there's just like places where, like, man, I can't believe they did that. Like, you know, you get the Baba Yaga scene where she's eating like soup, like that's filled with like there's like child bits, and like Hellboy turns around and there's like a meat locker of like children hooked up by chains, and it's just
yeah.
like, damn.
Also, I think it helps with this version when we get to the final demon form. Flaming swords just always look cool. You give him a flaming sword, that's instantly going to look cooler than the Del Toro version that has no flaming sword.
Yeah, I can dig it.
Yeah. Well, any final thoughts on Hellboy 2019?
I will always be sad that I don't get to see their like really beefy looking Abe in action that they set up at the end of this movie.
What do you think their Liz would have been like?
I have no idea. They probably would have done the romance thing again, though.
I honestly would have loved to see them. This has become one of my new like. I'm really sad this will never get a sequel thing. Which is funny because before we watched, I didn't give a shit about this version of Hellboy.
Yeah, no, I want more of this. In a world where every superhero movie is becoming the same movie, I want more of this, where it doesn't all work and it's very insane. But it's like, they put some different stuff.
Yeah, and it was refreshing. I don't have quite have that to the degree you do. I'm getting there. Like I'm being more picky about the superhero stuff that I watch. Um, like I don't know. I watch stuff for free, when it's streaming, but like I don't need to go to the theater to see like Shang-Chi or uh the Eternals. But if they announce the Hellboy 2, I would bother to go see that in theaters.
No, I had so much fun seeing this in the theater. Because my description of this movie is that this movie is 100% stupid. Sometimes it's like just stupid. Sometimes it's like stupid in like a really funny way, and sometimes it's stupid in an awesome way. But it's never not stupid.
So I might be giving this a bit of a high score because this is just based on the one viewing I've had. But I'm gonna go with the 3 out of 5 on this one. Like it's not a good movie, but it earns that 3 out of 5 for just being entertaining and like, what the fuck am I watching?
Yeah,
What do you think?
I'll give it a 3 out of 5.
Well, that was Hellboy 2019. If you haven't seen this and you like stupid schlock, watch this. It's wonderful. Um, and we will be back next week. Reviews will come out every Monday, as I mentioned in the update videos. If you haven't watched that already. And Austin, as always, it's great talking movies with you for an hour
Yep, that
because
was
we
good.
filmed 2 of these at once. And we will be back next week. Thank you for watching.
Yep. See ya.